Release the Kraken!
Yes, indeedy, the Kraken has been released. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. I got all sorts of crazy information, news, all sorts of stuff that's going to be happening here. We've got currently Giuliani's in Arizona right now doing his trial. A whole lot of stuff's going on, so let's try to dig into it and definitely have some very interesting information regarding the Kraken, what we know so far, and how this is likely going to be, seriously, like the Kraken in the movie. This is going to be the deal breaker. So we're going to get to that as well. Now, just out of Breitbart, Democrats, this was their original plan all along. They were planning on ramming all this highly crazy left-wing stuff down our throats. They weren't going to ask us. They weren't going to talk to us. They were just going to ram it down their throats. Unfortunately, they didn't win the House. Looks like there's a strong chance they won't win the Senate. It's going to come down to Georgia, obviously. And so, again, a lot of things didn't play out even close to how they wanted it. And, of course, with everything that's currently unfolding, looks like they didn't win the presidency either. So, sorry, Nancy. Sorry, Schumer. Looks like you guys are going to have to try again in another 4 years if you're still around. We'll see how that plays out. Now, some interesting information's been leaked. It's alleged right now. I know nothing more than this is what there's a phone call that they share. But again, we don't know anything about whether or not this is true. But if it is, there was literally Chinese companies involved with printing U.S. ballots for the election. And one of the examples they ended up showing was, I believe, Charlotte County ballot, which was down in Florida. So the ones that they were printing were apparently Floridian ballots. So again, we get back to the watermarks, we get back to the QRC codes, we get back to a lot of things. But we're also covering the fact that other countries outside of the United States may very well have been involved in what happened during our election and why maybe some shenanigans seem to be forthcoming right now. So something to keep in mind. Again, Trump had that executive order that talked about if foreign agents were involved, all sorts of problems happen. And then everybody else, by the way, takes an oath to defend this country and Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. And it seems we've got a number of domestic enemies. I mean, at least people that are against the Constitution. Certainly an example right here. Georgia's Stacey Abrams. She is basically asking Hollywood elites to help play a part. She's talking about people literally going out there and trying to, register to vote in Georgia to, have residency set up out there or whatever the case is, and then get them to vote. That's actually against the law. So it's kind of interesting that this is also a path that they're going down. I mean, again, right now it's just blatant. There's no real concern about whether or not the law is being followed. I think the big thing is we'll figure that out later. But the important part to look at is everybody is going full speed ahead. There is this perceived time clock that says we've only got so much time to move through all this. Again, Giuliani's in Arizona right now. I was listening to some of it earlier. It's pretty good. And then I think we're at Georgia tomorrow, I believe. So again, a lot is going on. We've got the runoff happening, and we've got all sorts of weird additional shenanigans. Now, I got a bunch of stuff around Georgia, so don't go anywhere on that one, because some interesting information is starting to surface. Also, and I like this, by the way, and this is super important, and this is one of those things we have to see it play out. Everybody talks about, why aren't you stopping everything if you knew this was going to happen? The only way you can actually get people, us Americans, we the people, to support what's going to happen is if we the people actually understand what is going on right now. Now, there was a number of surveys done with all the Biden supporters, 1,700 of them. I shouldn't say all. It wasn't even close to all. But 1,700 Biden supporters, and they hit them all up with like 6 key questions, knowing about Trump's successes, Nobel Peace Prize offerings, all these different things, right? The Hunter Biden stuff. And a lot of these people didn't know anything about it. Small percentage of them actually knew about all this crazy news. So it really is an information warfare game. So really important right now, the GOP is being put on the spot and basically being told, look, you either fight now for what's going on, you quote GOP, you either fight now for what's going on, or seriously, your days are numbered. And this is what Attorney Lynn Wood is kind of basically going off on all the, quote, weak-kneed GOP leaders. And there seems to be a number of them. So it's very important that these people, these Republicans, quote unquote, step up to the plate now, because right now is the only time you get. And if you are a deep state Republican slime bag, I want you to get the same fate as your deep state Democrat slime bag friends. Okay? Because this is your turning point. Here's where your conscience has a chance to turn your game around. You either support what's going on right now, we the people, or you will be the next people that we go after as far as investigations, as far as legal precedents, as far as maybe you get a room in Guantanamo. Not sure how that plays out. Certainly peacefully taking care of business. Now, interesting, and I'm just bringing this up mainly because I feel like it's an easy excuse to make fun of Joe Biden. I mean, I'll be honest. I'll totally be honest. But Joe Biden, I mean, he hurt himself, and it's not like he was out like playing football or he was out maybe, doing rugby. He was in the scrum, right? He wasn't doing anything quite that exciting. No, he actually hurt himself doing something way more dangerous. No, not jumping out of a plane either. I know, that was the first thing I was going to guess. No, actually just playing with his dog. Yeah, managed to somehow break his foot playing with his dog. The guy that's supposed to run the United States can't even play with his dog without injuring himself. Now, let's be honest. There was probably a nap in between, and you know how it is when you get up from a nap and you don't stretch and you instantly start playing. You can get hurt. So it's possible. It's possible. Who knows? Now, on the other side of things, this is kind of interesting. Not really the other. Yeah, it is the other side. Facebook fact checkers got fact checked. Big time. Legally. Tried to basically put a story out about Candace Owens, and they fact checked her. They busted her. They blocked it. And Candace Owens comes back and basically says no. And so here's what the whole story was. Weeks ago, @Facebook censored a post of mine which truthfully stated that @Joe Biden is not the president-elect, because that's a made-up term. So technically speaking, there's no such thing as president-elect. So I got lawyers involved. Conclusion, @PolitiFact uncensored the post and admitted they lied by rating my post false. The fact checkers are lying for the Democrats. And Candace Owens, who unfortunately got kind of beat up on recently by a comedian I'm very fond of. And anyway, I just don't want to get into it because it's just disappointing. That being said, so at 8 months pregnant, I unfortunately cannot fight on the ground alongside patriots like I'm used to, but I am taking every measure to fight these communists in the courtroom. It is my goal to expose these lying fact checkers one by one. Information warfare, as we keep talking. So this is a huge victory for us, for we the people. Thank you, Candace. I know you've been through a lot, and just I appreciate everything you've done. Man, it's really, seriously. Now, there's a lot going on around Georgia. Now, Trump obviously is pushing all sorts of angles, and one of the things he's trying to push is to get the Georgia governor to use his emergency powers to match absentee signatures. This is one of the key things right now. It's what Giuliani was just going off on Arizona about, too, is the second you separate the envelope from the ballot, that signature thing's gone. You lose that ability. And theoretically, if you don't have the ability to rematch, technically speaking, all those votes don't really count. And here's the sad thing. If they were cast legally, if they are, quote, legal votes, but the process that the states used created a situation for illegality because you no longer can match them, then it's one more example of how the electoral officials in Georgia managed to silence voters, which is what this whole thing is truly about, is we need to be able to believe our voting process. We need to be able to believe in the election. And the process they used in Georgia has a number of holes, one of which is the signatures. So, of course, Trump is being Trump. Now, another thing that's interesting that happened in Georgia, during their recount, they managed to crash all the Dominion servers. Now, part of me wonders if maybe there was some other stuff running on those Dominion servers at the same time, and even possibly some nefarious people too. And I say that because the Kraken, and we'll get to it. But I wonder if there was some other traffic that was happening on those servers, both good and bad, which certainly would help with maybe some of that volume. But that being said, obviously some stuff is going on with these Dominion servers. People are looking very closely into it. In fact, Sidney Powell, she's even talking about an emergency declaration judgment, and she wants to she's demanding seizure of every single voting machine in Georgia. Now, can you imagine how awesome and crazy that is going to be when they're able to literally grab hold of these devices and forensically test them? And it will be the Kraken that will be involved in this forensic testing for sure. So there's a lot spinning around that. Now, another thing in Georgia. Former FBI special agents finding massive numbers of absentee votes from non-residents in Georgia. Now here, again, we've got the Georgia governor talking about trying to get Hollywood and all these social elites, because of course they're all going to vote Democrat, to come on down to Georgia and get yourself a nice little plot of land or whatever, like whatever. And I know there's a lot of courting Hollywood, by the way, within Georgia. There's a whole lot of weird stuff with Georgia. That being said, it is what it is. Former FBI guy says, no. We found a whole bunch of non-residents that voted in Georgia. And depending on how that process plays and how stickler they want to be about it, technically speaking, if you knowingly voted fraudulently as a person, as a we the people individual, that's illegal and can be punishable. I kind of hope it doesn't, but right? Who knows? Now, here we get into the Kraken thing. The Kraken thing is fascinating. It's been used, obviously. And it's been used by Sidney Powell. It's kind of where the first thing came out. She says, I'm going to release the Kraken. People have suggested software. People have suggested everything. But what it really seems to be is the 305th Military Intelligence Battalion. Now, there's a lot of good things, not to just, dig too deep on this. We don't need to get ridiculous here. But a lot of us were talking about how we knew these election fraud things were going to happen. Trump was talking about it beforehand. If they knew all the Dominion systems were paid for by Hugo Chavez, then why weren't they paying attention to it, right? Why weren't we prepared for this? What I think has really been the case, and now we're finally hearing about it, is military intelligence has been involved in this from the get-go. Period. Just has been. They were requested to. There was plenty of evidence to suggest foreign powers were trying to interfere with our election, and they went into action and started really digging into it and setting up some defenses and setting up some places to do some real-time analytics. Now, the 305th is that group of people. Do they have software that they can probably utilize? Yeah, I almost bet the farm. Some of that stuff like Snowden and all that junk that they had, that was just to crack cell phones and whatnot, to be able to get into hack a cell phone. This is beyond that. This is hacking servers. This is getting into some of the deepest and darkest. This is where really a lot of IT, your CrowdStrike and all these different kinds of IT, these security packages exist to literally keep people from being able to do this. So if they got some skills, they went digging, and I guarantee information has come out. Now, whether it's top secret, whether they can get into how the investigation practices happened, we'll see. But one thing that's very interesting is this guy McInerney, the Attorney General, here it is, Thomas McInerney. I keep wanting to say like the lady, the Trump secretary, press secretary, McInerney, I think, Kayleigh McInerney, whatever. I think they're spelled differently, but they sure sound similar. That being said, yeah, so in groundbreaking interview, and this was the second half of the interview that I did yesterday's video on, but this Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney described the raid. So a lot of us have talked about these servers out in Frankfurt, Germany, that apparently were taken. They were grabbed. And there was question at first as to whether or not the good guys or the bad guys got them, the white hats or the black hats, probably the better way to say it. And eventually, Sidney Powell had come out at some point and said, there's a suggestion that it looks like the good guys got the servers. Now, there's even a little bit more information that we got from that interview, and I want to kind of check it out. It doesn't need to be played full screen because there's not actually any real video, but check out this minute and a half of General McInerney kind of describing this raid.
Special Operation Forces seized that facility. So they have those servers, and they know all this data they are providing.
Did that go down without incident, by the way? Did that seizure go down without incident?
Well, I've heard it didn't go down without incident. I haven't been able to verify it. I want to be careful on that. It's just coming out. But I understand my initial report is that there were U.S. soldiers killed in that operation. Now, that was a CIA operation. And so that's the very worrisome thing. Did that occur because of what Mary and I and Alan were notifying on the Sunday and the Monday in different networks that this was going to happen, that they were using hammer and scorecard, and so they decided to bounce it overseas. So the server farms that hammer and scorecard were using in the continental United States couldn't be used. I don't know that. In any case, it makes it more vulnerable because when you start moving that kind of data overseas, other people look at it.
But you are saying that was a CIA facility, and that was where the server was taken from by these special forces, was a CIA facility in Germany.
That's correct. Frankfurt, Germany.
And it's important to understand there's two key points here. So Hammer and Scorecard, he kind of gives us a hint. Hammer and Scorecard, something they were going to try to probably use here in the United States. Why not, right? It would have been easy enough. But what it sounds like is we were on to them. We were on to the CIA. With Brennan and all the stuff that he's been involved with, all the sliminess that he's been tied to, and even some of the comments he's come out with since. But we were on to them. So it sounds like they had to move this to one of their off-country facilities, Frankfurt, Germany. That instantly makes this sort of a different kind of crime altogether. So that's something I think that's kind of interesting is we were aware, the good guys were aware that the Black Hats were moving this stuff over to this Frankfurt location. Now, the other thing that's a little interesting, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, is to say that lives were lost during this means that a firefight possibly broke out, which means that there was an effort to stop them from retrieving this server. Now, I'll be honest, I have a hard time believing that's kind of how it played out. What I almost wonder, I'm just throwing this as total speculation, but it makes me wonder, were they waiting for the Black Hats to make their move, and then that's when they made the move to get the server? Like trying to get them while the Black Hats were trying to remove it. That's when the White Hats attack. I'm wondering, only in that makes a lot of sense for a firefight for sure, because at that point it would matter big time. Secondly, they would now know who the Black Hats are, or at least be able to identify some or all of them, find out whether or not they're American, whether or not they're German, what country they're working for. A whole lot of things probably came from that op. And that's one thing I'm very curious about. We'll never hear. But did they just show up to a CIA facility, NSA agents or whoever, and just show up and say, hey, we're here to get a server? And they're like, heck no, you're not. Pew, pew, pew. I don't think that's how this played out. That's just not how government agencies usually work. Now, guys, put me a check here if I'm wrong. But again, it's speculation completely. But there is a lot of craziness that's coming around this whole Kraken concept. The fact that people were probably looking real time at these Dominion voting machines, the fact that these machines weren't supposed to be on the internet yet were, means they were being monitored by good people and bad people. And the bad people, we knew they were going to monitor them. That was expected. So trying to get IPs, trying to figure out where that is, trying to route back into maybe where they're at. Now, a lot of times there's hops, right? A lot of times you're behind a VPN and all these things, so you don't know the IP. But there are other telltale signs that you can sometimes figure out when you can acquire a little bit of information. Time speeds for packets, all sorts of things. Like there's a lot of things you can start to look into that can help ascertain. And then they've got legit tools and serious programmers. So again, all this stuff is going to come to the surface in one way or another. Ultimately, this is an information war. Ultimately, it's about us, we the people, understanding what's happened to our country, what's been happening to our country, and what we were this close to experiencing in our country. We almost lost the greatest country God has ever given this earth. The new land, the new deal. This was the experiment for all. That's an experiment that's served us very well and proven to be, in most cases, not infallible, but certainly one that's capable of changing and adjusting on the fly. And it's something that I think we've done very well. This is an amazing country with an amazing living constitution written by our forefathers that really saw in the future what we would face as a country and tried their best to prepare us for it. But ultimately, it comes down to we, the people. And this is the time for us to take our country back. And that is what we are here to do. The Kraken, this group, this 305th, thank you guys. Thank you all of you who have given service to this country. We wouldn't have these freedoms to almost lose without your help. And I appreciate all of you. My grandparents fought in both wars. I mean, again, I got love all over the place for this stuff. Family members that were cops, we got it all. So thank you guys for everything. Thank you for the support. If you haven't subscribed, share. I'm in YouTube purgatory. Pretty much only subscribers see my videos. It's not really shared to people outside of that. So anything you guys can do to help spread it in other places, put it on websites, Facebook, wherever they'll let you play it. But we'll see how we can do. It's an information game. That's all this is. I appreciate you guys being there. Remember, united we are strong. Remember, olive branches to people that are not the crazy Democrats, but the ones that are open to understanding what's happening. Some of them are going to be a little concerned when they start waking up. This is a chance for us to unite. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.